Can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I'm like so excited to be here. I spent so much time in this exact room for many years. I don't want to say how many. A lot of years. And so I'm here to talk about my favorite topic in the world, which is flow. And to be doing this in the same room where Dr. Csikszentmihalyi really introduced me and so many others to the concept and the theory is very meaningful. And he was my mentor, my advisor. So this is for him, and so much of what I work on is really in tribute to him. And so, okay. A little bit about my background. So I really heard about the field of positive psychology when I was at the University of Michigan. And I took a course with the late, great Dr. Christopher Peterson, who wrote the first primer in positive psychology. He started the first lecture with 3 words, and he said, if you can distill all of the research up to this point in the field of positive psychology, it's other people matter. And then he said after that, if you want to leave now, that's okay. I just needed to make sure you heard those 3 words. And I was just hooked. So he told me, I did a lot of work with him, and when I was at Michigan, he told me about the program here at Claremont. And really the rest is history. To come here, get my doctorate studying flow with Dr. Csikszentmihalyi. And I started my corporate career at Fox Entertainment doing in-house work, like on an organizational development team. And that was my first experience blending academia and applied work in this field. And then I started my own consultancy called Dubin Consulting Group on the top right. And in the last 5 years, I'm the co-founder of a company called the Venn Collective. And we work with a lot of companies in sports, media, and entertainment. A lot of the local sports teams in LA, like the Lakers and the Rams. And we work with the 49ers, a lot of teams in baseball, like the Mets and the Blue Jays. And we really bring flow-based principles to their organizations. How do you create an environment where people can both perform well and be well? How can they feel a sense where they can perform at their best and also feel energy behind it? We actually just brought in, where's Kendra? She's just joined our team. Hi, Kendra. Okay, so anyway, if you're interested in talking more, just send us a note and collaborate with Mr. Higgins as well. And so, okay, who's heard of this concept before? Called time confetti. All right, so time confetti is basically, if you think about your time and your attention, split into tiny little fragments, where every time you are trying to focus on one thing, something else is trying to take your attention. Basically, if you have one of these in your pocket, or in your purse, or in your bag, you are inundated with a concept called time confetti, where every time you are trying to immerse yourself in something, whether it's an article, a conversation, a TV show, a project, it doesn't matter. There is something that is trying to always take your attention away from what you're doing and say, hey, look at me, look over here. We have access to all pieces of information in the world in our pocket. People in our lives can contact us anytime, anywhere via 12 different platforms, and it is almost impossible to find what we call a flow state in this modern way of working and living. There has been such a desire for people to experience higher levels of flow, but we are in an environment where it has never been more challenging to actually experience flow because of this time confetti concept. Time confetti is basically the antithesis of flow. Flow is when actually I'll get there in a second, but time confetti is basically if you have an hour of leisure time, for example, and in practice, let's say you're just trying to watch something for an hour on Netflix, whatever you're watching. You might get an alarm reminder for something, 5 minutes later an Instagram notification, 6 minutes later you glance at an email. Maybe you don't even respond, but now you're thinking about work or school. You get a few texts, maybe you respond to one of them. Maybe you get Slack messages if you use Slack. So if you add up all of the little pieces of confetti over the course of an hour, let's say there's 21 total pieces of confetti, 6 minutes and 20 seconds overall. If you extrapolate that, 74 minutes in a day, 8.5 hours a week, 34 hours a month, 17 days a year, just in confetti. Not to mention the amount of time it actually takes you to refocus on the original task that you were trying to focus on. Flow. The state of complete absorption and optimal experience. And as I mentioned, I work a lot in sports. So one of my favorite quotes about being in a state of flow is from the greatest shooter of all time, Steph Curry. He says, it's the one time that everything kind of goes on autopilot, and there's just synergy with everything that you're trying to do. Even your intentions are then validated by the atmosphere around you, where it seems like everything else is going right at the same time. You kind of get lost in the moment. One of my favorite things about flow is that there's not one size fits all. It's not something where it's like you have to be, it's something for work or it's something for your personal life. It's something you can experience in all domains of your life. It's something you can experience individually, whether you're reading or work or writing or working on a complex project. It's something you can experience collectively with a group of people, whether you're on a team, whether you're on a group project and you're brainstorming and everybody's in sync with one another. Maybe it's a really in-depth conversation with someone you have similar values with and you have similar interests and you're asking each other in-depth questions. It can be found in so many different ways, individually and with others. I want you to, there's give you a moment to actually interact with one another for a minute. I just want you to turn to the person next to you, whoever is closest to you. Think about what gets you into flow. It can be at work, school, or outside of work or school. Take like 3 minutes. Just think of something that gets you into a state of flow. Let's bring it back together, please. So, can I get 2 people from this side of the room? Just tell me what your flow experience is.
So I think very much so we both kind of commented on sometimes when we're outdoors or out in other environments aside from the house, let's say, when we're in the presence of other people, namely when we're experiencing a stronger sense of challenge or when we are enjoying the task or that we know that there is a task to be completed, that's when we go get into that. So.
Yeah. Okay, so it's you address the environment and then also like the nature of the task. Okay, that's great. That is great. One other from this side of the room. Sorry, I just haven't seen her in so long. Okay, yeah.
Kind of leveraging strengths and values, like we were talking about. Something gets you to what you're doing, but it's that combination of strengths and values sort of come together in purpose, and you totally lose track of it.
Yeah.
You can design, like I design learning experiences. So I can have that conversation in my head and on paper or whatever. But it's really, when I step back afterwards, like, oh yeah, I did that.
Yeah. So what's interesting about the way you're talking about it is you're not like saying there has to be these conditions in place. Like there has to be like a place you can apply your strengths,
right,
apply your values, and then. So it's not like any time you're doing a project, it has to. Yes.
It's taken me a while to get
Yeah. But there's like an intentionality you need to prepare to. Yes. Okay. Someone on this side. Yeah.
I think for me, I'm a big fantasy novel reader, so
cool.
I feel that when I get steeped into a world, that I'm learning more about it, the mechanics, and I think that the character dynamics are really interesting. I just find that I just get so immersed in it. I think I remember when I was in high school, I read the 7th Harry Potter book in one day. Just don't recommend, by the way. But I just remember my mom gave it to me for as a gift. At 8 a.m. I sat down and at 5 p.m. It was like a day shift. I'll never forget that. And I think also for me, meeting new people, speaking to people, and just letting curiosity kind of guide where the conversation goes and asking questions. I think that is something that I find makes conversations fly. Hour, 2 hours, and all of a sudden it's I have to go home. Wow, this has been a great conversation.
I think yes. So first of all, there's a term we call overflow, which might explain your Harry Potter experience. But seriously, that's great. And then the conversation, the fact that you are aware that it's you sort of opening up the conversation via more questions is something that a lot of people don't realize. And a lot of conversations don't lead to flow because we're kind of capping it. And we're just thinking about how we want to respond or bringing it back to ourselves, not allowing the other person to open up their world via the questions we ask. It's great. Go ahead.
No, I'm going to pass. Because
Okay.
I'm going to kill the momentum.
Anyone else want to say? Yes.
We were talking about it in terms of art.
Cool.
So we started with, you don't hit flow immediately, right? And it starts with a sketch. And it's when you brought this idea and image in your mind to that sketch, and you're like, I see the vision, and you start coloring or painting or whatever your medium is as it's coming together and you see that vision more and more clear, that's your flow. Because if you stop in the middle, which happens to me all the time, if I stop a project in the middle, I will not finish it because I can't pick that back up. It's not going to be the same flow. It's not going to be the same piece at all. So
Wow.
that's how we pass. How we march.
Yeah, that's so interesting. So you have a blank canvas or whatever, and then you have to kind of figure out the sketch, and then you have to see it to its completion.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. That's awesome. So we have. Oh, go ahead. That's the last one.
Well, I was going to say that flow is not necessarily pleasurable at all. Flow can be extremely unpleasant, and it arises from a sense of obligation that here is something that absolutely has to be done, whether I like it or not. Damn it, I'm going to get it done.
It's so true, and that Professor Mike used to talk about about that all the time. I'll talk about that more in a minute. But in the original flow studies, it was very much not people that were like doing things they just wanted to do. It was very like grueling, physically or mentally grueling things, and then that was kind of the flow experiences came from those. So it's a great point. Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
It's when I'm pruning a tree that really needs to be shaved,
Yeah.
and I cut one branch and I say, oh, back on the other one, and pretty soon this whole hour is gone, and the tree has changed face because I was looking for something that I had in mind, and it's just an ongoing process without being interrupted in my mind or anything else.
Yeah, that's amazing. So again, that's not the easiest thing you could do in that moment, is prune a tree, but that's something that's going to give you more gratification and fulfillment than a lot of other things, and how we spend our time when we're just feeling whatever's the most. In our world's kind of a change into always making things more convenient, it takes us away from the things that really bring us that true flow experience. Okay, so many different examples as you can see. Physical, mental, individual, and collective. When we are in flow, something really interesting happens in our brain called transient hypofrontality. It's the temporary deactivation of the prefrontal cortex. I'm not going to spend too much time on the neuroscience of flow, but basically, where we think about our sense of self, when we're self-conscious, or our inner critic, or when we're on FaceTime or Zoom, and this happens, we're just like, look, it's almost like we pay more attention to how we're coming across, or like looking like we're listening, or looking like we're laughing or smiling, than actually just being in the moment with someone. That melts away. That's why one of the reasons it can be so incredible. So this is, here's Professor Mike, and then he, in his original studies, to your point, he studied people in different domains. Painters, surgeons, dancers, rock climbers, among others, who were at the peak of their fields, doing very difficult work, not fun all the time. And he basically coined the term flow because so many of them describe their experiences as like, it feels like they're just flowing once they get into the rhythm of what they were doing. So he started to think about whether you are a dancer, a painter, a surgeon, or rock climber, regardless of domain, what are the commonalities of an experience of flow? So the way I'm going to talk about this is taking his original preconditions of flow and kind of bringing it into our modern world of how we live and work today, and some examples that I often share with the clients that we work with. So the preconditions, having a clear goal. When you know exactly what you're trying to achieve, you are able to enter a flow state. However, oftentimes there is micro goals and there's macro goals. So trying to complete our PhD, for example, over the course of years is a macro goal. You need to complete a series of micro goals along the way, right? Whether it's your portfolio, taking certain courses, your thesis, etc. And then you can find flow experiences within those micro goals, knowing you're going towards this macro goal. One thing, I'm going to take this to a very micro level. People often have very choppy days now. And when I say choppy, I mean you might have a meeting from 9 to 9:30, and then a break from 9:30 to 10. And then another meeting from 10 to 10:30, and a break from 10:30 to 11. Those types of days, very, very difficult to achieve a flow state. Because if you have a 30-minute chunk in between meetings, there's not something very meaningful you can accomplish. And it's typically not enough time. So when I always encourage people, try and chunk your days better. It's more effective to have 2 or 3 meetings back to back and then 2 hours with no meetings. Because that allows you then in that 2-hour block after your meetings where you don't have any meetings, you can actually set a clear goal. What's the one thing I want to accomplish in the next 2 hours? What's something that I will have made progress on by the time these 2 hours are up? It allows you to create a very clear micro goal for yourself and enough time to achieve it. So the way we structure our day is very under thought about and underrated when it comes to achieving flow. Number 2, immediate feedback. So in the original flow studies and since, one of the biggest preconditions is that we need to have a very clear sense. Are we making progress towards our goal? When I work with organizations, a lot of what we talk about, this concept of feedback, oftentimes it's like thought of as from this standpoint of a manager giving employees like feedback on performance. But doing that every quarter or twice a year or once a year is not enough. I always think about, like, let's say for a team, if their coach only reviewed film after a whole season and you reviewed 100 games of film, that would be ridiculous. You do it after every game. But even in the original conception of flow, the feedback's supposed to be immediate. So I give you one example I'll talk about is, like, let's say I'm playing a guitar and I'm learning how to play a certain song on the guitar and I know how it's supposed to sound. If I play the wrong note, I'll know it's wrong right away. You'll hear it, it'll sound off. And I immediately look down on the strings and course correct to find the right note. We need to know what the right notes are. And a lot of us in our work life, it's like we're almost like we can't hear the notes of whatever our job is. We're like, I hope this is the right direction. So we work a lot with leaders on, like, how do you mimic the experience of every time someone works on something, they know whether it's the right kind of progress or they need to course correct. Very, very important while we're working on something. And sometimes it's intrinsic. Like, who talked about paint, like drawing? Or you probably, when you're drawing, I would imagine you have like an intrinsic sense of like how it's turning out the way you want it to be. So we're very lucky if we feel that intrinsic. Sometimes it's a little more extrinsic, where we do need someone to give us more direction, especially in a professional context. All right, number 3, autonomy. If we think about, we have a clear goal of what we're trying to achieve, but we need to have control over how we get there. We need to feel a sense of control over that. One of the reasons people tend to be so allergic to micromanagers is because you feel like you've lost all of your autonomy and sense of control over how you're supposed to work. Some people, like in a professional environment, some people are introverts. They want more time to think through things and reflect on them before discussing them out loud. Some people are extroverts. They want more time to talk out loud with a group of people. That's how they work through ideas. Neither one is better or worse, but people should have that autonomy to think through ideas or execute work in the way that makes best sense for them, knowing we're going to achieve this shared outcome together. And lastly, the balance between challenge and skill, which continues to be one of the core elements of achieving a flow state. So basically, in this channel, when we have a high level of skill and a high level of challenge, that's when we enter that flow channel. And this is something that comes naturally to us. Let me give you an example. Anybody play like video games like Mario or anything like that growing up? Yeah. All right, so tell me, you beat level 1. What happens? Go to level 2. Not pretty obvious. You get better at the game, you move to the next level. Then you master level 2, you go to level 3. You master level 3. You inherently grow your skill set, and the game automatically increases the challenge to keep you engaged. So basically the whole nature of the game is you have this like skill challenge balance that kind of grows together. That's what makes video games so engaging for people, naturally. Work should feel the same. That we start with a skill set, the challenge kind of matches it. And then as we grow our skills, the challenge increases. That's how we achieve greatness in whatever it is that we do and become experts in whatever we do. It's because we naturally want greater challenge as we grow our skill set. It's very gratifying to continuously feel like we're utilizing skills, growing our skills, and then increasing the challenge. more recent research shows that when the challenge just exceeds skill, that's actually the ideal, when you have to stretch a little. So it's like not a perfect balance, but like challenge is slightly higher than skill. That's when like we really achieve flow. So let me give you another kind of sillier example. Where's Waldo? Social distancing edition. Where is he? We see him. All right, our skill obviously exceeds the challenge. You don't have to look at this for more than a second to know where he is. All right, what about this one? You could stare at this for the next hour and you wouldn't find him, and after a minute or so, you'd be like, I'm not doing this. This challenge of this exceeds our visual skill to find him. I don't know where he is in this picture, but I think he is there. But what about this one? I'm going to give you 30 seconds. Raise your hand if you see him.
First one, right?
Oh, I see. Who sees him? All right. He's right there. So this is an example, right, of like, I always love when I pull up this slide, people lean in like a degree closer. Because you see, it's like, oh, this is actually something I can achieve. Like, I probably have the skill to match the challenge of this exercise. It's natural. You don't have to think about it like, what's the skill? You just immediately knew that like, this is going to be more engaging than the last two images to find him. That's how life and work should feel more often. Any little game you play, like Wordle, it's the same thing, right? So we always try in professional contexts, how can leaders set an environment for work to feel more like this? Not like this, where people feel like they're drowning, and not like this, where they're doing repetitive tasks day after day after day after day and just get bored and be like, what am I doing with my life? This is how work should feel more like this. So, okay. As we talked about in our first exercise, your flow is going to be unique to you. And essentially there is two kind of overlapping concepts. There's our personality preferences, right? Whether we're introverted or extroverted, whether we are more detail-oriented or big picture-oriented, whether we care more about, whether maybe we are more instinctual in the way we think about things or make decisions. Maybe we need more data and information. These things will influence how we find what flow looks like for us in a professional environment. Then are there our life or work circumstances. Do we live alone? Do we have small children? Do we prefer ambient noise? Do we prefer to be in an office? Do we prefer to be at a coffee shop? There's all these different like environmental adjustments we can make to find flow more consistently. And it should always, we have to really be considerate of what's our personality, and then if we're trying to find flow with someone else, how do we complement each other? And that's where we get into the collective flow concept or group flow. You raising your hand?
Are you telling that this is a deterministic situation where someone would not feel a sense of flow when they're raising children? Or it has to do with our preparation, our educating ourselves, our basically looking at it way ahead of time and then getting prepared for it? Which one?
No, I'm sorry. So what I mean by that example is like some people might feel like, I find flow when I work from home because and that their home is quiet. Some people might feel like my home is actually very loud and I need to remove myself from my home to find flow. It's just a preference. It's just like, that's just an example. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, sorry, that was, yeah. So, okay. So basically we have to do this we have to do this work for ourselves of what our personality, life work circumstances, and also if we're trying to complement each other's strengths. For those of us who have taken any like personality style assessments or those types of things, and like this is my style, this is their style. I know like some of them are better than others, but typically what we're trying to do is like how can we best click together to be in a flow state with one another, and that's why it's so good to understand each other at a deeper level. Okay. Speaking of, I want everybody. Close your eyes for me for one moment. I I want you to imagine now that you are the captain of a speedboat. You are driving down a lake. You see someone on water skis to your left. You don't want to get too close to them because you don't want the ripple effect of your boat to affect their experience. Then you see someone, a group of kids swimming on your right. You don't want to get too close to them. You continue moving straight. Then you see some buoys up ahead. And you don't want to get within those buoys because you know you'd have to drop your speed to 5 miles an hour. So you veer a little to the left. Then you look up and you see some rain clouds coming in. And you think to yourself, I don't want to get rained on out here, so I'm going to find the dock and get back to the shore. Everyone open your eyes for me. Raise your hand if anybody was thinking about what was going on directly behind you while I was talking. Yeah? That's great. Anybody else? Okay. So we have 2. Okay. So essentially, as we know, if anybody's spent time on a boat or anything, we know that like when a boat is moving forward, there is a wake behind it, a ripple effect. Let's say you are on a speedboat driving it and you are pulling someone on water skis. You would know that every little action that you made as the driver of the boat would affect their experience behind you. Whether you go faster or slower, whether you go right or left. The direction of the wake changes, the speed of the ripple effect, it's all going to affect the experience of the person behind you. So, when we work with leaders and talking about how to create environments of flow, we talk a lot about a concept called a leadership wake. That every behavior, decision, and action that you make has a ripple effect that impacts the people behind you. And then this gets to one of my favorite research findings that I've personally been associated with, is that flow is contagious. That basically, when my energy and my presence is going to impact whether someone else is going to be energized and present with me. In this time confetti environment, people are so incredibly distracted, and we don't often realize the impact that has on everybody we come in contact with. I can't tell you how many times we work with our clients and people complain that every time they have a one-on-one with their boss is on their phone, and they're distracted, and they're doing something else. And it just makes them feel deprioritized. They have things they would rather be doing. There's things they'd rather be thinking about. They don't feel like and it affects how they show up to that meeting. They don't seem to be putting that much time into it, so why should I? And what we don't often realize, whether we're leading an organization or just in line at Starbucks, how we're showing up has an impact on everybody around us. And so we're talking about group flow, we need to keep that in mind. That it's not just about my own little silo. It's how I'm going to show up in an environment, in an interaction, is also going to affect the other person that I'm interacting with. So when we get into collective flow, the factors of it that have been, over the last 20 years or so, have been a little more well-defined, but that a group has to have a shared goal together. And that people need to listen to one another, and we say close listening. Not just listening to respond, but who talked about asking questions? This guy over here who's writing, you, right? You talk about asking people questions,
Yeah.
and you actually, in order to come up with a good question to ask, you really need to listen to what they're saying and be fully present with them. So close listening, and then being completely concentrated with other people on the same endeavor, and then blending egos with one another. As I mentioned, working in sports, this is like the biggest one, is blending egos. When we have a big ego, what naturally happens is we put self-interest before group goal. What I want to achieve individually matters more to me, and my priority system is then going to, whether it negatively impacts the group, as long as it benefits me, that's how I want to behave. That is a huge barrier to achieve collective flow. And then everybody has to have clear roles within a group environment. So for example, there's so many, in corporate America, meeting culture is broken. And one of the reasons it's broken is because there is such a lack of clear roles. We have all of these meetings. Oftentimes it's one person talking the whole time, inviting a group of people to join. The majority of people don't even know why they're there. And they just kind of tune out. And we're not respectful of people's time. If you are going to take someone's time to be in a situation with you, why are they there? And what should they be contributing? And then we want to, when a group of people is familiar with one another's strengths, blind spots, background, and truly have a full understanding of what they bring to the table, what they can maybe complement us, where we can complement them, that's going to be essential. And then also we want to keep things moving forward in a group environment. Has anybody do improv here? Anybody do improv, have done it, or know a little bit about it? Who knows the yes and technique? So if there's a scene, an improv scene, there's like this classic technique. It says yes and. Whatever's going on in the scene, you build upon it. You don't stop someone in their tracks. And for group flow to occur, we want everybody to feel like we're building on each other's ideas. If someone feels like, no, that's a terrible idea, like let's not explore that whatsoever, it's going to stop it in its tracks. We can disagree with one another, but there's a healthier way to do it, where people feel like they're still being heard, and it's still moving us forward in some way. So that kind of yes and technique in our conversations and in our brainstorms. And then also the potential for failure. This is like, I think the way this is, the language of this sounds like failure in this like big way, but I think there needs to be some level of stakes usually. And when I say, so that can even mean like, as simple as having a deadline. That creates some urgency around a situation. Where I have like if I say like, yeah, you have this project and you just kind of do it indefinitely whenever, just let me know when it's done. It's gonna be harder to motivate yourself to find flow than it is like you have a week to do this, or 2 weeks to do this, and you have these check-ins along the way. So there needs to be a potential where if I don't hit certain like landmarks, deadline, whatever it might be, there needs to be some sort of urgency behind it. Even as small as like how long you schedule a meeting for. People aren't intentional enough about that. On Outlook, for example, or Google, the default meeting time is 30 minutes. Who's to say this should actually take 30 minutes? It's just an arbitrary time, but we just like fit everything into that time block. But for flow, it shouldn't be arbitrary. Maybe we just need 16 minutes for this and we're done. But it's human nature to fill the time available to us. So I always say like, maybe like you schedule this one for 20 minutes. Maybe you need 40 minutes for this one, but don't just submit to a default arbitrary time. That's not being intentional. So, the message I want to leave you all with is that for us to achieve a flow state in this time confetti environment, we need to be incredibly intentional. For every day, we have to make conscious decisions about how we are approaching our work, our life, in order to achieve flow. Because if we don't, nothing in our environment is going to help us. Our environment's set up to keep us out of flow. So we have to do our part now, much more than ever before, to find flow. We're not going to just kind of fall into it that maybe we could have 30 or 40 years ago. And especially with, and I have to say, with AI, but there's so much like, there's potential maybe for flow in some ways, but also like the delegation of critical thinking, right? You have to be more intentional even about thinking now than ever before. You have to be more intentional about collaborating than ever before, because you could just like give you the tools stuff. So even with that, it's just increasing the level of intentionality. So basically, I want to leave us like with those. If you can remember 2 words from this: intentionality and contagious. That flow is contagious. That's what I want you to remember from this talk. If you remember anything, I know you're listening to a lot of stuff today. But I know we have a couple of minutes for Q&A, but as far as the formal part of the presentation, that's it for me. So thank you so much. Yes.
So I had a grad student years ago who explained a concept to me that totally shifted how I approached some of what you were just describing. and it was the nature of Chronos versus Kairos time. Has anybody heard? Basically, it was Chronos time is the clock time, and we're all locked into this prison even before there were digital watches. There's the time, the sun rises, the sun sets. If I say I'm going to meet you at 3 o'clock and it's 3:05, I'm late. And Kairos time is the timing of things.
Oh.
If I ask you when the apple will drop from the tree, it will drop when it is ripe. And it's this whole idea of allowing for, in this structure of time that you're talking about, having 2 hours to do something instead of trying to jam something into 30 minutes. I've reorganized my schedule so that I have those big blocks of time, because creative work requires the Kairos flexibility instead of this Chronos of, so I've got my blocks of time to just relax into it, and then the alarm goes off to let me know now I have to resume all of the busier stuff.
That is fascinating. I have never heard of it.
It was one
That's
of my
such a
students
huge,
gave it to me.
yeah. Say the two Chronos.
Chronos, Kronos.
Okay.
Kairos, Kairos.
That is amazing. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. Yes.
So we often talk about, like the gentleman in back there said, that flow doesn't have to be inherently a good experience.
Yeah.
I have a hard time with that idea because it feels like it would be something else. It's like addiction or something else. I don't know. I don't have a word for it. But I often, when I talk about flow with my positive psych undergrads, we often have a discussion around when gaming is or isn't flow. Do you have any, I don't know, can you speak to that a little bit more? You mentioned like the idea of overflow, which I don't fully understand either. But like, when is it like you are stuck in a like behaviorist reward cycle and you lose time versus you're in a flow state and you lose time?
Yeah, I mean, I think, so there's like, Professor Mike, Dr. Csikszentmihalyi used to call something junk flow. Mm-hmm. And at that time in the 90s, it was like watching TV, mm-hmm. but like now it would kind of be just like scrolling on your phone or that kind of thing. And mm-hmm. like, you can kind of lose track of time that way, mm-hmm. but it's not actually making, I think a big thing is like, is this something that's making me a more like whole and complex person? And that's not something that is doing that for you.
Right, so. And I don't think that like, I feel compelled to finish. I don't think that's making me a more whole or complete person either. I think, and maybe I'm incorrect in thinking this, but I do feel like flow has a connotation of growth. Like it has a connotation of something positive, but then we pulled in these other ideas of, oh, I accidentally read book 7 of Harry Potter in one day, or I just spent my entire Thanksgiving break gaming and didn't do anything. Like,
yeah, I think for the way I was interpreting it a little bit is that like it doesn't need to be easy. Flow is often very challenging. It's very difficult. Like for example, a rock climber mm-hmm. is like might be the most physically grueling experience of his entire life. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't mean that afterwards they were incredibly fulfilled by it. Mm-hmm. So I think like it's not necessarily need to be something that's fun or enjoyable in the moment, but it's something that feels like you're investing your whole being into it, and then afterwards you're like, I am now better in some way because I did that. So it doesn't have to be necessarily like fun or, you know.
But there is a positive or growth orientation, or like there's a net good at the end.
Yes, but I think one of the reasons it's part of this field is because the complexity of who it's making you become physically or mentally or socially mm-hmm. is increased by having gone through it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yes.
I would kind of like to touch on that because as the young man over there was talking about the dark side of flow, I wrote something down. I said, "Can flow be addictive?" Mm-hmm. And it got me thinking because I've done a lot of work in this past semester about workaholism, mm-hmm. and that's kind of what it was reminding me of. And then you started bringing it up. And I had also taken classes on purpose, and purpose is inherently positive, but there is a dark side of purpose. Mm-hmm. So, like, mixing all of that together, I'm wondering, you know, would you confirm or deny that, sure, something that is inherently positive, like flow, there can be that dark side that does take you down a different path, and it is about intentionality. Why am I doing it? And is it contagious in that way? That if I get addicted to flow and I get addicted to this work, does that then ripple out to other people? So can I contagion them in the wrong way?
Yeah, so this is, I absolutely think there's a dark side to flow. I don't know, I haven't read too much about the research behind it, but I mean, for something as simple as like, all of my time is invested in this over here in my professional life, so I'm ignoring my personal life just because this is like my flow. Yeah, I would that would be an example, and I think that does happen, and I think workaholism is probably a huge example of how that can happen. I don't know. I think that's something that, let's say, assuming that's the case, how that would, like, where the relationship of like somebody needs treatment in some way versus like you just need to do this, because I think flow is inherently something that like, it's very rare for someone to feel like usually it's the opposite problem, like I'm never in flow. So I think, but for those examples, there's probably other factors about that person that is just making it so they're like they can spend 20 straight hours or whatever the case doing something. So I would say like it's probably just not singularly a flow conversation, but there's other things we need to bring into it around personality. Yes.
I have two questions for you. The first one is, what were the two words that you said not to forget?
Oh yeah. Clearly they resonated. No, I'm kidding. Intentionality and contagious.
Intentionality was, yeah, thank you. And I have one more question.
Yes.
Since you work in organizations, I coach clients, I coach executives, and we've spoken about the concept of flow. And sometimes it's ideal, but it's not. It doesn't always fit into the corporate culture, which they put so many meetings. There's just so many distractions. How do you present the autonomy that, let's say, an executive or an employee has when the culture of the company is counterproductive to a state of flow? Because there are just so many.
It's a great question, and I think what I often talk about is like, what are the 10% changes we can make? If you're in a culture where, like, I think sometimes we're like, I'm in a culture, so that's this way. I can't change the culture, so I'm going to do nothing. But we typically can do things to change 10% of our own environment or someone on our team's environment, and that makes a difference over time. So if you can just, if it's a meeting-heavy culture, but you can personally take one meeting a week off of your team's time, that's 52 meetings a year. So it's just like, what's the little things you can do to make 10% tweaks?
So you don't feel completely defeated by that?
Yeah, don't just be like, it's hopeless.
Yeah.
You know? Wow, okay, how are we doing on time?
Time for two more questions.
Okay, let's go here, and then we'll go here.
So I'm really curious, just, I'll start with this. I've read before, for people with ADHD, where there's a natural attention deficit, right? So I think it really applies to when you speak about the time confetti, how these things can kind of interrupt. You're talking here in the structurally in an organizational setting, right? But I think it was interesting connecting it to the idea of ADHD, where I think time confetti is kind of a naturally built-in setting for a lot of people with that kind of brain composition. And to me, I was really interested because in ADHD there is this notion that when you interrupt somebody who's hyper-focused in ADHD, there's an adverse emotional reaction. They often experience frustration of some sort from being interrupted from that. And I was interested to see double-barreled or however you want to, if you want to collapse them, that like, are there like noted adverse emotional reactions to being taken out of flow, and has flow been examined at all in like a neurodiverse state, such as some people who have attention deficits?
Yeah, so there's a lot of people that have anecdotally asked about this, and there's being more written about it. I need to do more research, but the answer is yes. Like, people are very interested in that, and like the relationship between ADHD and flow and what that might mean, and the differences and similarities. And so, and then from anecdotally, I have talked to so many people that feel very irritated when they are taken out of flow. And I think there is an adverse emotional response for most people, whether it's minor or sometimes it's major, of like, you are fully in it on something, and then somebody is like, for unintentionally or not, just like takes you out of something that you were so deep into, and if you think about it, it makes perfect sense. Think about it. You're investing your whole being in something, and it's just like, it's it's almost like being woken up from a dream. And it's like, it really just, it's like this whiplash that is very, very challenging. And then you're probably not going to go back into it.
Yeah.
And so I personally get really annoyed when something gets me like, and like having little kids, it's happening all the time. But yeah, for sure. Okay, let's go here and then I'll go do it. Okay.
Yeah, I just want to understand in a therapeutic session,
Yeah.
it always depends on who is interrupting you and what's the nature of the relationship. Because if that relationship is very appealing and you really welcome it and you respect it, no annoyance is not there. But if you're finding somebody interrupting you and you're annoyed already by it, then it's bad.
There you go. There you go. All right, last one.
So it's interesting because I'm coming at this from the perspective of someone with ADHD, pretty extreme ADHD, if I do say so myself. And I thought it was so interesting that you said intentionality because I'm pretty sure I've never intentionally entered a flow state in my life. It happens when I am. I remember one particular time I was working on the code for a multi-level model like analysis for a study that we were doing in the lab, and I worked on it for 9 hours straight. And I did not sit down to write the whole thing in one sitting, but that's what happened. And it is to the idea of it being addicting for someone who has such a hard time focusing. That feeling of natural flow, and I think that's why that piece that you said, that you might never get back to it. That too, because and it doesn't matter who it is who's interrupting me. If you are stopping my flow, it hurts physically.
Yeah. And I think I'm glad that you brought this up, and then to kind of as like the closing, is that intention. Once you're in flow, you're in flow. There's no intentionality. You're not thinking that way anymore. But I bet you there's more than you realize about the environment that had to be set up for you to then be able to spend 9 hours on something. And I think when I say intentionality, it's like if I just feel like if I'm going to have 25 internet tabs open, my phone's up here, and the TV's on, and I'm just like, I'm just going to start work. It's not going to happen. So when I say intentionality, it's more like setting up the conditions for success, what that might look like for you, in order to be able to then, like, once you start working on something, you have the capability to fall into that flow state. So I think that's where we're not intentional enough. Yeah. Good? Okay. Thank you all.